The other day, I decided to make a graph about melodic structure, and in particular, the sentence. The sentence is a very, very prevalent melodic structure in classical music and romantic music, and also in pop. Although in pop it's done a little bit differently, particularly it doesn't follow the kind of harmonic or functional harmony trajectory that it usually does in classical music. But otherwise, the structure and the effect is very similar. And the example I chose for this particular graph is Ariana Grande's Into You. I keep thinking Next to You because of Thank You Next. Into You. And I hesitated a bit to use this example. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But first, I want to explain what a sentence is. So a sentence consists of 4 parts. It's usually 8 measures, but it can be 16 measures. It can be 4, anything that can be divided into 4. Sometimes it can be an odd number if you extend the cadence or something like that. But that's the usual thing is 8 measures. So, and it's divided into 4 parts. So the first 2 measures are the basic idea. This is it in this song. And then the next 2 measures are a repetition of the basic idea. Again, it's a little bit different in classical music because of the functional harmony. It's not usually an exact repetition, but in pop, it often is an exact repetition. And then the third line is fragmentation. Fragmentation is when you take fragments from the basic idea, or sometimes just new fragments, and kind of line them up to pick up the pace. And then the fourth part is a cadence. So let's look at this example, Ariana Grande's Into You. So this is the first basic idea. Let's play that. Right? And then you have a repetition of that basic idea. Right? This is the repetition, by the way. I'm hiding the notes, but it's pretty much identical. And then you have a fragmentation. So this would be the fragmentation. And then you have a cadence. Again, not a classical cadence, but something that leads into the next section. So I think that's pretty straightforward. And there are other examples in other songs that I'll give you later. But I wanted to talk about this third line because this third line, the fragmentation, is the reason I hesitated to use this example and almost went with another one. If you look on paper at this line, it's very, very similar to the previous 2 lines. And the only difference here is what I kind of labeled as a connector. And I hesitated, even though when you listen to this chorus, it doesn't sound anything like 3 repetitions. The first 2 lines sound like a repetition of one another, but then the third line sounds like something else, and it really sounds like fragmentation. But like I said, on paper it looks different. And when I made this graph, I didn't really think hard enough about why that is. So I just made this graph, and I didn't really think too much about addressing this point. But I'm really glad that someone kind of called me out and questioned me about it. And that someone is 12 Tone. I'm sure you all know his channel. Because I'm glad he questioned me, because it forced me to think about why that connector makes this line sound different and kind of faster paced than these lines, even though it's almost identical. So I probably shouldn't have used the word connector, because what it does, it actually separates these 2 fragments. Let's look at the first line. So you have this first phrase here, and this song is in F sharp minor, so this G sharp that it ends on, that's scale degree 2, which generates tension because it implies sort of a dominant harmony here. And that tension lingers until the end of this second phrase here, because basically the second phrase is a repetition of this first phrase, but what it does is it resolves the G sharp, this G sharp here, down to F sharp. So the tension is generated here, but it only resolves here. So it keeps these 2 phrases kind of unified in what I kind of call a meta unit. And then the same thing happens here. But then when you get to this fragmentation, what happens is that instead of waiting for this second fragment to resolve this G sharp into scale degree 1, which is F sharp, this thing that I called connector, and maybe I should have chosen a different term for it, resolves it first, and then it kind of restarts the same phrase. So both of these fragments resolve to F sharp minor. Let me just play that one more time, just this fragmentation part. Right? So it sounds like the first fragment doesn't linger like it did in the first two lines. So again, I'm really glad it forced me to think about it, because it's actually really interesting, and it shows how, you know, with one little tweak you can completely change the feel of a line in a song. So that's really cool. So actually, you know, my main goal was to kind of describe what a sentence is, but kind of got to dig a little bit deeper, which is always nice. And if you want to hear more examples of the sentence, just to kind of get a better feel for what it sounds like, the Chainsmokers' Don't Let Me Down featuring Dea, the pre-chorus there is a sentence. Another example is Tove Lo's Talking Body, the chorus is a sentence. Let Me Go by Haley Steinfeld and Alesso and Florida Georgia Line Watt. That's also an example. I think that's in the chorus as well. Yeah. So check out these examples. It's really interesting how it's done. You know, when I first started getting into this, I didn't think these classical structures would be so popular in pop, but there you go. And so I hope this was informative, and I'll see you in the next one.